Hi, this is Andrea Jennings. Welcome to Access for All Integrating Accessibility, where we explore the intersection of pop culture and accessibility. We'll shine a spotlight on those who are opinion leaders in the accessibility world. They are bringing change in this groundbreaking show. So join us each episode as we change the future. I want to talk about someone that I have the honor of calling a friend. Her name is Andrea Figueroa. Andrea was a fearless, disabled, vegan, Afro-Latina, and I'm not saying this in any order of importance because she was just everything to us. Anyone who knew her personally, and even those who knew of her advocacy, know how much we all miss her. Unfortunately, Andrea Figueroa's life was cut short due to inaccessibility. I encourage you to read about Andrea Figueroa, and I encourage you to join in the fight for her justice and all of our justice, just like we know that she would have done for us. She was a wonderful actress. She was a film curator. She was a vegan. And one thing I loved about being her friend is that she was very opinionated, but even as a vegan, she didn't push what she did on me. She lived by example. Jeannie and Ray Chung, it is so wonderful to have you. I was introduced to you guys many years ago. It's been a few years back.
It has been,
where I was interested in architectural interior design. And it was so great to come in this store and have a conversation with up-and-coming and modern designers that you can actually look at this space and compare it to major design spaces. And we had a wonderful conversation about accessibility. And it's rare that I can talk to people about that. What is your why? Why did you want to get into design, and who inspired you, and how did you get into the accessibility part of design?
Well, first of all, I think that exclusive design is becoming more inclusive. And, just by experiencing what my parents went through and my own experiences when I had an ankle injury. And, it forces you to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Gosh, this isn't easy to get around. How can we make life easier for those who aren't able-bodied like ourselves? And that just requires a little bit of forethought. Everything's possible. And just because you're designing, for, ADA spaces, that doesn't mean that they can't be pretty. Of course they can be pretty, right? So my mom was is the person that I always looked up to. She is, and always has, thought ahead and been ahead of her time. So about 15, how long has it been? 15, 20 years ago, when she redid her home. And, at the time I wasn't a designer yet, but I was looking at the things that she was implementing in her own home.
Aging in space. We talked about that.
Aging in place.
Yeah, aging in place.
Yeah, aging
exactly.
in place. And she put in a lot of things that she didn't necessarily need at the time, but she knew that 20 years from then she would, it would be very important to her. She didn't want to put grab bars in the hallways. She's like, oh gosh, they're really ugly. But, it's a simple thing to do, to put the blocking in back of the walls, cover it up with drywall, and when the time comes, that's already there, and it's just drilling into the supports that are already there. So she thought about that ahead of time. Same with the shower. If she hadn't put in those supports back then, she would be demoing the tile, and it's a whole production.
Right. And we talked about this earlier. Speaking of putting yourself in someone else's shoes, we talked about human-centered design, and we had a conversation about inclusive versus universal design. Do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Universal design is more about the physical, the physical disabilities. When we refer to inclusive design, it's physical and psychological. So that could mean cultural. It could mean, gender fluidity, and incorporating the gender-neutral restroom. And I think I also mentioned to you airports. Airports are incorporating family restrooms because an elderly person may not be able to use the restroom on their own, and there may be a female that's helping a male. So where do you go if it's only male and female? So
love that, and love that incorporates all cultures, all communities. I love that.
yes.
And Ray, what is your experience with accessibility and design? Do you have any stories to tell us? I know you and I spoke about a situation that you had when making this space accessible. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, I truly believe most businesses, if they know what accessibility entails, where they have all the information and they can, assess whether they can make it feasible financially. I think most, businesses will do that. Outfitting this space to be accessible cost us a lot of money that was spent unnecessarily.
Let's talk about that. Let's have a candid conversation and go deep into that, because so many business owners probably have the same concerns that you have. And then I'd love to hear solutions.
So, we had built a ramp, and we forgot about the two-foot landing at the top of the ramp, where somebody in a wheelchair would have to be let go of the hands of the wheelchair and to open the door. That's where I discovered that there is a group of people that have a certification called CASP, which is Certified Accessibility Specialists. And I reached out to one of them. They came and did a field study, and they gave me a report, and it was the best money spent. And we had the space completely accessible.
Before you found CASP, what was it like not knowing that this resource was there?
Our space being open was dependent on making sure that our business was accessible. Yes. And without that, I wouldn't be able to open. And, having to redo the ramp would have been costly. And that would have, as a small business, that's a unexpected expense that we didn't budget for, and that there's no way we could be able to pay for it all and still open, and the time delay, all of it.
Thank you for your honesty. And I know you both personally, and I know that another factor besides that, but that's very honest. These are concerns that most business owners have. Mm-hmm. But I know that you also wanted the space accessible for people like me, to walk in. And tell me about how you decided to go about making those spaces accessible. And I also know that you do have accessible bathrooms, and you're still working on certain accessible features above and beyond compliance.
We are a business for everybody, and we truly believe that, you know, everybody should be able to come into our store and come into our business and, you know, source beautiful fabric, beautiful wallpaper, without, you know, on their own terms, and not be, you know, needing somebody's help or whatever. Because at this point, especially in this day and age, everybody should have the dignity to be able to walk in the store without, you know, on their own free will and, you know,
Or roll.
yeah, right,
This is true.
yeah, you know, and live a life that however they see fit.
That's right, that's
You
right.
know.
What are some of the highlights of the class that you took that really stuck out to you?
Learning about this CASP certification, you know, by the state of California. I temporarily forgot about it, but then, you know, it's like in the back of my mind, I realized, and I'm like, wait, there's something there, you know, it's like, and it was a few years past, and I was like, okay, I got to dig up my notes, and I did find it, and I, you know, called up somebody that was on the list, and I go, you know, it's like I contacted them, and they came and did the field study, and, you know, of the space, and they found solutions that made the space perfectly accessible to the state of California standards.
That's amazing. So you're not just left alone. You have a network of people to help you, even when you forget, because this is not your expertise. I know we talked about this before, but if someone came in with a dog, how would you handle that? I think that they've taught you a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like you know, service dog is absolutely allowed in the space. They are there for, you know, I mean, just like anything else, it's an aid, just like a walking cane is, just like a wheelchair is. I mean, that's all part of it. So there's no discrimination and say, oh no, you can't have the dog in here. You know, service dogs, service animals are welcome.
We've also had emotional support dogs here. So.
And I love everything that you're doing. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with both of you is because you're interested in going above and beyond compliance, which I love. And tell us what you've been doing lately. I know you've been doing a lot of speaking and panel engagements. Is there anything that you're touching upon that has to do with inclusivity or accessibility?
I recently moderated a panel on inclusivity and accessibility in vacation rentals. And it's really interesting. You know, I mean, I'm actually going through the process right now looking for a vacation rental, and there aren't very many out there that have the amenities. I wouldn't even call it amenities, but the things that are needed, you know, accessible parking, if you need grab bars in the toilet, the shower, and even within the last couple of months, they didn't have all those check boxes. So now they do.
What are some of the solutions that you have, being that you're in the design space? I want to hear more about what you do, because it's so amazing.
When we consult with the client who is looking, they may not, you know, they may not be very old, but they're thinking ahead of time. And I think nowadays, because it's an open topic that people are discussing freely, that people really want to learn more how they can make their homes more accessible, not just for their guests, but also for themselves as they age in place. And we have to we have to educate them on how much clearance is needed for a wheelchair, 60 inches, how much knee clearance is needed at the vanity. There are other issues with lighting. Lighting is a huge thing, where toe kick lighting in the kitchens and the bathrooms, especially, that are motion with motion sensors. That has enabled, the average consumer. They don't have to get up and to open their shades. They can just do it.
And we talked about this. I had a friend that I spoke to who is blind, and I assumed, even though I'm an accessibility strategist, that she would prefer speech technology or smart technology. And she actually prefers tactile appliances. Now it makes sense, right? What is the future of design? Because I always tell people it starts with design. When they leave disabled individuals or consultants like yourself that are familiar with accessibility out, it's more expensive to add it in later, in my opinion, than it is, to start out with that.
It is thinking about those issues ahead of time. That's going to be more cost effective. And I think even designers now, product designers, they're really thinking about accessible. That's top of mind. I mean, we've got a French door oven. You think, okay, that's really pretty, but it's not just about pretty. It's accessible. You open it with one hand. You can roll a wheelchair underneath. There's another oven out there that you can access via Alexa. So it's voice controlled. Open the door, Alexa, and it opens. I shouldn't say that too loud. So, yeah.
The technology today. What are the most requests that you get for accessible features?
It's the zero entry shower.
Yes.
That's the most asked for.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also because it's prettier that way. It's seamless. Some people think that it's something that we're doing for beauty, where in fact we're not doing it for the aesthetics.
It's not a privilege. It's actually something that we need. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's one of the, what do they call, the 7 ADLs? ADLs, you're taking care of yourself. It's how you bathe and clean. But that's what I've heard too.
Yeah.
We're putting together a town hall so that we can get information from the community about what features that they would like to see that is compliance, more of that. And also above and beyond compliance, what are some of the things that you see in the future that we need to maybe think of designing when we design ADUs? Because now a lot of people are designing ADUs, right?
A lot of people are designing ADUs, yeah.
And that actually opens up a lot of new accessible units. But what are some of the things that you would advise people think about putting in when they design their ADUs?
The ramps, that's
Right off the bat.
right.
Right.
Ramps are one thing. Thinking about, oftentimes people don't think about the surfaces that they're putting in. And especially as you're growing older, you can't have those slippery surfaces. So that goes back to that tactile element that you spoke about earlier.
Yeah, and we talked about different disabilities needing different things. And I think, like we talked about, you being a consultant, it's just sitting down and talking with people to figure out what they need, their individual needs. Yeah, and Ray, as someone who deals with the customers and the clients and the public, do you hear any conversations, or is anyone asking you more and more about aging in place features or accessibility features?
I mean, a lot of people, even in the design side, it's like door widths, the width of the door to allow a wheelchair to get through, the width of a hallway, how big should it be? And, all those pathways that, get you from one point in the space to another point without obstruction. The size of the furniture, how high, how low, whether it's easy for somebody in a wheelchair to transfer themselves from the chair to, say, a sofa, or if it's too low, then it's hard for them to get back into a chair.
Yeah, and even people, I think one of the things that I try to drive home is that 1/4 of Americans identify with some sort of a disability, and 1/5 globally. So at some point in your life, you're either going to know someone who's disabled or you're going to be disabled. And let's not forget about people who use baby carriages. Let's not forget about people who deliver packages. So it just makes sense to add these features in. But even someone like me who's a cane user, just like you said, the length of the height of the furniture really matters. It's hard for me to sit on really low furniture. So for me, it would probably be something a little higher. But we've been so candid lately when we're talking about this. I'm going to share with you a mistake that I've made as someone who's a strategist and in this space. So I made a sizzle reel here, as a matter of fact. As I was speaking, I said something so ableist. I left that in the sizzle reel, and when I started to do a lot of speaking engagements, at the very end of my speaking engagements, I told people I said something very ableist, and I showed it back, but I wanted them to feel comfortable to know that even me, I can make mistakes. Accessibility is something that's evolving because for so long, barriers weren't thought about, and now people want to talk about it. And so I'm loving this conversation because we're not just talking about solutions, but we're being candid that, like, I didn't know this happened until I had an injury, and I wasn't born with a disability, and I didn't know all the barriers. But what are some mistakes that you have made that you would like to share, on this journey?
I think we're forever learning every day. Sometimes because we don't think about it every day, that we just assume that everybody can do what we do, that they can walk on their own 2 feet, they can run, they can jump, they can do whatever. And yeah, I mean, most people forget that there is that segment of our community that can't do that. And, it's not a matter of mistake. I think it's a matter of, taking for granted a segment of our community that needs more support, not in a form, but I mean, in a form of hey, let's think about how we can make their life a little bit easier. Give them the same freedom that they can walk into a store or roll into a store without any assistance, and being able to, kind of give their own dignity back. So, I mean, for us, it's really, ever learning and really, consciously thinking about what can we do better? How can we do better? That's the goal for me.
I love that answer. And what I hear you saying is you believe in practicing cultural humility, and what about you? And he said this in such a wonderful, eloquent manner. But
I don't know if I can follow in his footsteps.
what would you like to add?
But, I mean, in my younger years, I used to think to myself, just driving into a parking lot and seeing so many empty handicap spots. Gosh, why are there so many empty, handicap spots?
And we love to call it disabled spots now.
Yeah,
It's exactly.
Yeah, but that's what they called it back then. Oh gosh, nobody would notice, right? But you know what? It's a big deal, because if somebody is, they need to go into a store and those spots are taken up. Someone thinks, oh, I just need to go in for a second. Yeah, just real fast to pick something up. It's not easy. It is not easy. And I experienced that when I was in a cast and I couldn't, I had nowhere to park because people were picking up their food, running in real quick
No,
to get something.
That is such an important piece and part. So you did a good follow-up, right?
Yeah.
Not that there's any competition. And what I hear you saying is that, people don't realize their impacts of their actions. And it may be, like you said, it may be a forethought or afterthought. It may be something that they think about later, rather, and they probably should think about it as a forethought. But just realizing what your actions do, how it's impacting someone. And even myself, I have a disability, but I often think about, even though we have the disabled parking spaces, there are spaces that are literally for people with vans. And so I'm careful not to park in those spaces because someone with different disability needs that. And so I will even be mindful of that myself.
Yeah.
Would you like to leave us with an aging in place tip today?
Oh, I think I gave one earlier about when you're going through construction, just really, putting in that extra blocking in the walls. It's not going to cost you a whole lot more, if anything. And when the time comes that you need it, everything's there and you can just drill those holes in and put those grab bars in. And I think especially around the toilet, that's really important because sitting down, it's very hard to get up. So you do need that to pull yourself up.
No, I agree. And the fact that you brought this up twice, people, she means this is serious business.
Yes, it is serious.
So thank you so much. We thank you for your time and the fact that you believe in practicing cultural humility when it comes to accessibility. And I love that we're talking to people behind accessibility to find out their whys, and we're putting in their voices and elevating their voices. So thank you for being here today.
Absolutely.
I want to honor a person who is so near and dear to the city of Pasadena, Robert Gorski. Robert Gorski was the host of Access for All. He was an ADA coordinator with the city of Pasadena and a mentor and friend to many. Today, we want to honor Robert Gorski. I want to also highlight that the city of Pasadena's Accessibility and Disability Commission has made an award that is available to highlight many people who serve in Pasadena that are really promoting accessibility. Each year, they select one person to have this honor, and they call it the Robert Gorski Accessibility Award. I hope you learned something today watching Access for All Integrating Accessibility, where we dive deep into the subject of accessibility beyond and above compliance.